911 ST. Is it a parts bin cash grab or something totally different? Is it that different than the GT3 Touring, and is it worth all of the extra money it costs, which it does? We're in Italy to find out. It's the 60th anniversary of the 911, so Porsche decided to give themselves a present. The 911 ST. Wondering what the ST stands for? Basically, it's a turducken. In 1969, following the success of the super light race-ready 911R, Porsche sold a competition version of the street-legal 911S, but with a focus on making it as light as possible. They took an S, gave it the reduced comfort and 2.2-liter engine from the 911T, and voila. To the world, and most importantly, the FIA's homologation rules, it was still an S, but internally it was an ST. It had plexiglass windows and body panels made of fiberglass. In 1970, STs nearly swept the Monte Carlo Rally, and they went on to compete in Le Mans, East African Safari, Daytona, and more. This new ST follows a similar formula, but Porsche doesn't want you to think of this as a parts bin car. And that's true. The doors come from the GT3 RS, as does the engine, the rear sway bars, the springs, and the dampers. And if you're going to have the carbon fiber reinforced doors, you need to have the fenders to match, although these don't have the vents cut in the top. And the hood comes from the GT3 Touring. You see, the parts don't come from bins, they come from other cars. But that's not a bad thing, because all the work they've put into this mean that this car weighs just 3,056 pounds, making it the lightest 911 on sale today. And just because two pizzas have the same ingredients doesn't mean they're going to taste the same, especially when the pepperoni is controlled by a lot of computers. A food analogy in Italy? I'll be waiting for my Pulitzer. Anyway, the engine and some body panels aren't the only hand-me-downs. The suspension hardware is exactly what you get on the normal GT3. The difference is that Porsche's engineers have spent more than a full year tuning the dampers and steering. A full year of road tests, keystrokes, and algorithms, the only goal being to perfect how the car feels and reacts to both the road and driver. There are a few new parts though. The rear steer is gone, and the steering ratio has changed from 14:1 to 15:1. It only comes with a manual, and most impressively, they reduced the clutch and flywheel mass by 50%, helping the engine spin to 9,000 RPMs even quicker than before. So how does this pizza taste?
Guys, you know, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without the support of our amazing sponsors, and perhaps the most amazing of all is Aeropress. I have been using Aeropress for 10 years now. It is the world's best coffee maker. The fact that it's lightweight, super durable, and super portable, that's just a bonus. Whether you are making a single or double cup or a little bit more with the Aeropress XL, it is the perfect at-home or on-the-road coffee solution. But big news, folks, now available in Walmarts across the country. Chances are, no matter where you live, there's a Walmart near you. Walk right up in that place, take one home. Aeropress available at Walmart. You got the regular, the XL, and the new holder system, right? The organizer keeps your Aeropress, your cap, and your filters all organized. So thank you to Aeropress for supporting today's video, and go check one out for yourself at Walmart.
It's incredible and very, very fast. The engine revs up so incredibly quickly. It's not like the GT3 or the RS engine were any slouch, but what they've done is they've just removed a little bit of rotating mass from the clutch and the flywheel, so it just spins up that little bit quicker. It's so fast. Peak torque is around 6,500 RPM, and then peak power doesn't hit until 8,250, and it redlines at 9. Although we haven't been on many roads here that are long enough to explore that.
even with rear gearing that's 8% shorter than the GT3 Touring. It revs so quick. It's like throwing a tennis ball against the ceiling. It's now, despite the lighter rotating assembly and the shorter gearing, Porsche says that the 0 to 60 time for this car is 3.5 seconds. I think that's very conservative because Car and Driver tested the GT3 Touring manual and they hit 60 in 3.3 seconds. So I would bet my BMW's next service charge that this will be a little bit quicker. Oh my God. It sounds so angry. When I drove the GT3, I complained frequently about how bumpy it was on roads, even when the roads seemed like they were fairly perfect. Even with small bumps underneath good tarmac, you really felt it and kind of bumped out of the seat. This has done a much better job of managing a lot of really imperfect tarmac. On this trip, we have been on everything from fairly brand new blacktop to modeled patchwork and sand and some kind of rough stone. And this has done a much better job of keeping the tires on the ground and upsetting the driver and the car a lot less. I mean, it's pretty raw, but it doesn't like skip over bumps. Even there, that was a really strange transition. The tarmac went up about an inch or an inch and a half, and we heard the sound, but we didn't feel it. I didn't get pushed up out of my seat the way I have in the GT3. And you can probably hear that on the microphone, on the speaker. Like, there are little potholes all over this road, but the car is not skipping across them at all. It just absorbs them and keeps moving on. Front end grip from the Pilot Sport Cup 2s is as crazy and impressive as you'd expect. 255 fronts, huge rears. But the steering feel is amazing. One thing they didn't want to do was put weight in the steering as a sort of fake version of feedback. Some car companies will basically take the assist away and they call that sport mode. So the steering wheel gets heavy and you go, ooh, I can feel so much. It's like, no, there's a difference between effort and communication. They wanted to focus on communication. So the steering is kind of light off center, but the only feedback you're getting as you get into the angle is from the lateral load being put onto the tire. I don't know, it feels really direct and honest. I think McLaren is still slightly better, but that's because that's a true hydraulic setup. This, they said their goal was to mimic a hydraulic steering system as best as they could. And once again, it's my favorite EPS system on the market. Now you might have noticed from the interior shots that there's no mode knob right here. We don't have the different modes. We have a button for shocks, which the suspension engineer said he would prefer to use on a smooth track or a really, really smooth road. It makes the car more eager to turn in and stiffens things up a little bit. I play with it a little, and it's a little hard to tell the difference because we haven't been covering the same turn over and over and over again, so it's really hard to kind of A/B test that. Subjectively, it's felt like it stiffens the car up a little bit. I've been perfectly happy keeping the car in normal mode. It is plenty sharp. Porsche's rear steer is so good that it does my favorite thing, which is it's invisible. I don't really know that it's working. I can't tell it's back there the way I have with some Mercedes cars or others. But what I like here, and even though it's kind of a placebo effect, is I like knowing there's no variable back there. There's nothing going on that might upset the back or trick me or disturb the inputs I'm giving the car. It speaks to what the motive of this vehicle was. They wanted to make the ultimate driver's 911. It's not a track car, it's not a race car. They just wanted something that really optimizes for driver enjoyment. And I think getting rid of as many systems as possible is a good way to do that. It kind of makes the car a little bit more honest. And it saved 25 pounds. Jeez. And honestly, I haven't missed the rear steer. We've turned around, it's been fine. We've been on some really tight hairpins down here in the south of Italy, And never once have we had to 3-point turn, or have I felt like we were missing some sort of agility in the car. No, quite the contrary. The car is very agile. And even with this slower steering rack, a lot of the work the engineer did on the suspension was to help the turn-in. So part of that was having a slightly smaller rear differential that stays open longer. It doesn't lock as quickly as the one on the RS does. That helps with the turn-in a little bit. It also stays open on exit a little bit as well. It's kind of the McLaren effect, really. Brakes are, of course, carbon ceramic, 6-piston front, 4-piston rear. They are gigantic. The pedal feel is really firm up top. I would say common among really high-performance sports cars these days, where the first inch and a half of travel is very firm, and then you just have to get deeper and deeper into the pedal. But of course, they haul you down real quick. And I have rev matching turned off. I used it on the first day just while I was getting used to the car. And it's very helpful. Let's talk about the size of this car and its predecessor, the 911R. That car came out in 2016. And incredibly, 7 years later, a lot of cars have grown. This is basically the exact same size. It's the same exact wheelbase width. It's like half an inch taller or something like that, but they are basically the exact same size car. This makes a little bit more horsepower, but it also weighs 30 pounds more than the R did. The fact that it's the same size and weight, I think, is impressive because so many cars have grown by hundreds of pounds in that amount of time with electronics and systems and niceties and things like that. So keeping the weight and the size here is really cool. And the product of them spending a full year on this stuff is good. It's really good. This is how I want a sports car to ride. You know, it's firm, but it is not put off by these little bumps. It deals with them immediately, and the tire goes right back to the ground. It never leaves the ground, honestly.
Frankly, there's not much to dislike. At low speed, the clutch sounds like a toddler throwing rocks into a garbage disposal. I recommend the 4-way seats over the buckets for long drives. And there's more road noise than you'd get in a Touring.
Of course, the question many of you are wondering, and might also see as a little offensive, is what does it cost? Well, the car starts at $280,000, and this one, which has a few aesthetic changes to it, but no nose lift, no real options, is $300,000. Yeah, it's a lot of money. Were you surprised by that? It's a special edition 911 with a bunch of GT3 and GT3 RS parts. Of course it's going to be expensive. When I adjusted the 911R, which started at $185,000 in 2016, when I adjusted that for inflation, it was $230,000. So that's not bad. They just added $50,000 to $60,000 on top of that. But, you know, they got to pay their employees, right? I mean, and honestly, this car has everything a driver could want in a 911. It has the best engine you can get in a street car. They've lightened it and changed it. They've improved a bunch of things. It rides a little bit better. It's also the lightest one. I mean, that stuff has to be worth something. And it's exclusive. They're making 1,963 of these. When you combine optimized performance with limited production run, and it has a marketing story attached to it, it's going to be expensive, unfortunately. But the good news is that it delivers on all of the promises, and I think it lives up to the hype. Whether or not it's worth the money is an incredibly subjective question. I will not say that it is or is not. That is 100% up to the potential shopper or you, the viewer. All I will say is that this does justice to the story we were told and to the spec sheet it has.
We actually had a GT3 Touring on hand, and although I didn't have time to film it, in just 10 minutes of driving, I was shocked by how different the cars feel. The Touring was quieter, but it skipped across bumps in the road rather than managing each one. It actually moved around more. And the steering had only 70% of the feel and feedback and energy that the ST does. The bar has once again been raised by the alchemists at Porsche. If your goal is to tickle all the synapses that love driving, and if you can afford it and you don't mind the increased cabin noise, I think this is the most exciting 992 road-focused car that one can possess.
Whoa. Second. Okay, I'll stop here.
And remember, always fight your tickets. Use code TST10 on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.